She's a female doctor, a lady doctor. If female nurses are the angels in white, then perhaps female doctors are goddesses in white. She seemed to be around my age, 35, or maybe a bit older. Not bad looking at all. Far from it. She had features that were quite appealing to men. However, when I addressed her as doctor, she showed no reaction, expressionless as she scanned through the X-ray and MRI images on the monitor. "An ambulance, doctor," she said brusquely, not even a hint of a smile. The ambulance had been called by the other party. "My name is David. I had to go to City Hall that day, so I took the afternoon off from work. On my way back, I saw an elementary school boy playing ball. He ran into the street chasing the ball. A large, thick tree created a blind spot for the cars on the street. The traffic wasn't too heavy, but the cars were driving fast. I watched the flow of cars and the boy. This is bad, I thought, dangerous. He's going to get hit. I reflexively ran to stop the boy. Almost simultaneously, I heard the screech of a car's sudden braking. I lifted the boy up, but ouch, the hood of the abruptly stopped car hit me around the waist. The man driving the car rushed to me in a panic. I told him I was fine. It was just a slight hit. But the man fled and called an ambulance. I was transported to this hospital by ambulance for the first time in my life. There were no visible injuries, but I underwent X-ray and MRI examinations. While waiting for the results, the boy I had shielded was brought to the hospital by his mother. The boy, scolded severely by his mother, apologized to me repeatedly, asking if I was hurt. "I'm fine. I'm indestructible. But remember, never run onto the road again. Understand?" The action I took in the spur of the moment prevented a major accident, and I was being thanked for it. With that thought, the pain in my waist felt like nothing, and I was in high spirits. Then a young female nurse came to call me for the examination results. She said to the boy, "You're lucky, saved by a handsome man," and gave me a smile. Truly an angel in white, it seemed like there were countless twinkling stars around her smile. Right after that came that goddess in black. There were absolutely no twinkling stars, and it seemed like she had thick, dark storm clouds on her back as she treated me coldly. "David, about this weekend." "Not again. I told you, I'm good." I declined an invitation from my junior at work, who was obsessed with events for singles. About 6 months ago, this junior asked me to join him as he didn't want to go alone, and I went to an event for singles just once. I wasn't interested to begin with, and indeed, I didn't meet anyone special. It wasn't fun at all. I too think it's about time to settle down since I'm getting older, but I would prefer a more natural encounter. Indeed, I yearned for meeting someone, but I had no desire to attend another event for singles. Besides, at this time, I had someone on my mind, the female doctor who was cold to me. Her aloofness only piqued my interest more. I couldn't help but dwell on it. Well, I don't think it's likely, but in the case of a traffic accident, symptoms like whiplash sometimes appear later. So if that happens, make sure to get checked out at some orthopedic clinic. I remembered her words as I touched the part of my waist where the cars had grazed. It was still a bit painful. All right, it's not completely healed. In that case, why not go and get it checked? Time is of the essence. The next day, I went to see her for a consultation. "Oh, the one from the other day. Are you not feeling well?" The amiable nurse addressed me. I managed to smile and asked her the important question. "Is the doctor who's been seeing me married?" "If you're talking about Dr. Emma, she's single. Why do you ask?" I did a silent fist pump and said I was just curious since a female orthopedic surgeon is rare. I was sweating, hoping she didn't see through my ulterior motive. Just then, my name, David, was called. When I entered the consultation room, she was checking my medical record on the computer. "What brings you here?" "My waist is still hurting from the accident." She looked at the record again. "It shouldn't be a big deal. She casually suggested another checkup if I was still worried. I hesitated, and she remarked, "Is this your first traffic accident? Some patients overreact, especially the timid ones." She was half smirking, a bit condescending. I got a little annoyed. "But it still hurts. I can prescribe some painkillers." She stared at me as she said this. "It really isn't a big deal. If you don't believe me, why not get a second opinion from another hospital?" I had no choice but to back off. That weekend, I was at my regular bar, having a drink with the bar owner. I wonder if female doctors usually marry other doctors. The bar owner stopped chopping and looked puzzled. I continued, partly talking to myself. They earn more, are smarter, and have strong personalities and high pride. They're out of reach for an average office worker like me. As I muttered, the bar owner asked, "So you want to date a female doctor?" "No, not at all. It's just a general opinion." Just a general opinion. As I responded, I realized my mind was full of thoughts about her. She doesn't give me the time of day, treating me with nothing but coldness. But the colder I'm treated, the more the fire within me burns. Am I the type of guy who likes such treatment? As I'm pondering this, my phone starts ringing. It's a picture message from my junior who loves matchmaking parties. He sent me photos he took at a matchmaking party he attended that day. Seeing how desperate he was to get married made me feel pitiful, realizing I'm not that different. After seeing the photos he sent, suddenly the idea of drinking alone at the bar seemed less appealing. It had just gone past 7:00 in the evening, but I paid the bill and headed home. Then, just as I left the bar, a woman's happy voice called out to me. I looked in the direction of the voice and saw a young girl smiling at me. I didn't know who she was. I thought she was calling out to me, but I looked around to see if it was someone else. There was no one else standing. "How are you feeling?" Then I finally recognized her. It was that friendly nurse. "Oh, I hardly recognized you. I thought you were just some girl." A white nurse coat is powerful. It can turn any girl into an angel. She also lived around here, so we walked together, making small talk. "By the way, is Dr. Emma always like that?" I brought her up. "Dr. Emma? Like what?" "Just between us, she seems kind of aloof and hard to approach." To her surprise, I was the first patient to describe her that way. Not only is she an excellent doctor, but she's also friendly and popular among the patients. I listened while nodding, but I just couldn't accept it. "Well, I'm going this way." I watched the angel without a white uniform walking away. So she's only cold to me. Could it be she's playing hard to get? My thought process was unusually optimistic. The pain in my back disappeared before I finished the painkillers she prescribed, and there was no new symptom. So I lost the chance to visit her clinic. However, I noticed the chain on my seldom-used bike parked at the apartment complex had rusted. I decided to ride it for a test and pedal for the first time in a while. The chain made some noise, but there were no serious issues. The bigger problem was the flat tires and the brakes not working well, so I decided to take it to a bike shop. I rode the bike and reached an intersection. The light was changing from green to yellow. The bike shop was just across the intersection. I was too lazy to stop, so I paled into the intersection and collided with a turning vehicle perfectly. Thanks to the other car's abrupt braking, it didn't end up in a major incident. I scraped my arm when I fell, but it was just a minor bleed. The leg I band wasn't in much pain either. The female driver who got out of the car went pale and offered to call an ambulance. But I was the one who rode recklessly, and it's just a scrape, so I refused. Afterward, we called the police and dealt with the accident. I didn't get home until the evening. I shouldn't have been riding a bicycle. I should have left the rusty chain as it was. Regret was all that came to my mind. Maybe because of that, I had no appetite and felt down. My mind was foggy, probably exhausted from the police inquiry and stuff. The leg that got hit started throbbing in pain, so I decided to go to bed early and promptly got in bed. The next morning, I woke up when a sharp pain ran through my leg as I rolled over. I felt nauseous and out of sorts. Symptoms like whiplash might appear later in case of a traffic accident. Her voice echoed in my mind. Is this it? Is this what she meant? I had no choice but to go to the hospital. So I called in sick to work and went to her clinic. How can I help you today? When I staggered into the consultation room, she, who was looking at her computer, hurriedly stood up and supported me. Then she gently led me to the examination bed. I was riding a bicycle yesterday and got hit by a car. I explained the situation and how the pain in my leg worsened this morning and that I felt nauseous. Let's get you tested right away. Her voice was filled with a kindness that wrapped around one's heart, unlike any I had heard before. Her usual cold demeanor had done a complete 180. Could it be that I'm seriously injured, need major surgery, or have after effects? On her advice, I was admitted to the hospital immediately. I asked my colleague, who loved events for singles, to bring the minimum necessary belongings from my home. Then she appeared in the hospital room to inform me of the X-ray and MRI results. I had a mild concussion and bruises all over. The concussion is very mild. A neurosurgeon has confirmed there is nothing to worry about. There were bruises other than on your leg, but there's no abnormality in any bones. You're lucky. All my worries about surgery and after effects were unfounded. With this in mind, I asked, "Really?" Then she said, "Really," and gave me a kind smile. Seeing her face, my heart rate soared. She was most concerned about the severely bruised and swollen right leg. If the pain is too much and walking alone is difficult, she suggested staying in the hospital for about a week to observe the progress. Of course, I followed her advice. Is the female doctor who just left your assigned doctor? David, when she left the hospital room, my company's junior asked. When I responded yes, my colleague crossed his arms and fell into thought. When I asked, "What's wrong?" he said, "I feel like I've met her somewhere before." My injury was healing well, and I was told I could be discharged as planned. There was no need for any special rehab, but I had to visit the hospital once a month for the time being. On the day of discharge, while I was packing my belongings in my room, she came to see me. "You're being discharged today. Congratulations. Thank you for everything." As I bowed my head, she, seeming a bit shy, greeted me with a subtle smile. I was deeply moved by this, and I couldn't help but blurt out, "Actually, at first, I thought this wasn't going to work." "What do you mean by not going to work?" "What wasn't going to work?" She looked at me with surprise. "I mean the compatibility with you. Why did you think we wouldn't get along? Can you tell me why?" I talked while scratching my head, feeling awkward. When I was first brought in by the ambulance, her attitude seemed cold. According to a female nurse I talked to later, apparently, I was one of the very few people she treated like that. "I see," she stopped mid-sentence and looked around the room. Then, leaning close to my ear, she whispered softly, "I have a break coming up soon, so once you're ready, maybe we could meet in the courtyard." "Well, okay." I looked at her suspiciously. She implied she had something to say that she didn't want the other patients to hear. "So, it's not good here. Let's continue our talk there, okay? What is this conversation going to be about?" Hope and anxiety were swirling inside me. After completing the discharge procedures, I went to the courtyard where she was waiting during her break. As I approached her on the bench, she opened her mouth with a bitter smile. I'm the one who's not good at mixing personal feelings when examining patients. Personal feelings. When I asked back, she nodded and explained. Even though I had gotten into a car accident protecting a child and was injured, I joked about being indestructible because I had only minor injuries. That had angered her. Hearing this, I felt like I understood. Doctors are dealing with patients brought in by ambulances with all they have. Her being angry at me for being lighthearted was just the other side of that. I reflected on my behavior. I felt bad and remained silent. Then she suddenly changed her tone and said jokingly, mocking herself, "And this is a bit embarrassing, but when you kept calling me doctor, doctor, I realized." Realized what? Don't you remember that matchmaking party? My mind was filled with question marks. The only matchmaking party I remember was the one I attended about 6 months ago as a favor to my junior. During the talk time, it was customary for both men and women to ask each other, "What do you do?" I plainly said, "I'm a doctor." Then I got some weird looks. Jokingly, people started saying things like, "I've been having some pain here," or suddenly started calling me doctor, doctor. Hearing this, I remembered. At that matchmaking party, back then, I was told by my junior that there was a female doctor. For fun, I kept calling her Doc and teased her quite a bit that time. "Oh, was it you, Dr. Emma?" When I asked, she nodded. Her makeup and vibe were totally different, and I hadn't realized it until that moment. Or maybe, just like the angels in white coats, I thought it might be the magic of the white coat. She remembered the humiliation from that party and acted cold towards me. I'm sorry about that. But when doctors are off duty, we're just normal women. It seems like she keeps professional and personal separate. Since then, I meet her once a month for consultations. At the same time, I meet her 2 or 3 times a week, seeing her as just a woman outside the hospital. Just the other day, I took her to my regular bar for the first time. The bar owner whispered, asking what her job was. When I replied she was a doctor, he nodded several times. "What happened?" she asked me, looking puzzled, so I explained. I had previously discussed with the bar owner whether a doctor would marry another doctor or wouldn't consider a regular guy like me. She chuckled. I asked her, "As a matter of fact, what do you think?" It depends on the individual, doesn't it? Some doctors marry other doctors, and some don't. It seems there are people who are set on marrying doctors, but it isn't necessarily the case. Do you mind not marrying a doctor? I don't worry about the job. I don't have to marry a doctor. If I did, I wouldn't be here with you. Does that mean? I couldn't help but look at her. She, with an innocent face, picked up the menu. I was foolish to think aiming for a female doctor was aiming too high. Having high aspirations and love is what brought her and me together, and it's what will keep her and me together moving forward. How was the story today? Pressing the subscribe and like button will encourage more productions. Looking forward to your comments. See you in the next video.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me and began to speak. "There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only." Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. "I'm leaving." After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, is something wrong?" Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using therein. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.